Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We're going to start our breakout session on time. We are starting at 5, we're finishing at 6, so do not worry. You will make it to the next session. Let me introduce all of the speakers. Let me introduce myself. So we're here to talk about participatory, open budget, innovative, grassroots budgeting, whatever you want to call it. And of course, I'm going to speak in Russian, but I can speak in English as well. I suspect that the majority of people in the audience are Russian, so you would. So I think most people in the audience would probably prefer to listen to a translation from English into Russian. So we believe that such budgeting and direct participation of citizenship in budgeting, we firmly believe that this is an extremely interesting and stimulating idea. It's something that's been brewing and percolating to the top for a long time. You all know about the Republican management tradition that was established several centuries ago. But I think what is truly remarkable here is that today, in the era of technological developments, and when we have remote access that can be provided to citizens to discuss public spending and, of course, such participatory budgeting or participatory investment gets a new lease on life. So we wanted to discuss all of it from the global point of view. We wanted to listen to international experience. We are also trying to look at the Russian experience. We have a representative from one of the Russian regions, regions that actually started taking part in such open budgeting project. So we wanted to gather a lot of points of view when it comes to participatory budgeting. And of course, we are going to finish by summarizing. We will give the floor to a person who will tell us a lot about Russian participatory budgeting. So let me introduce the participants: Vladimir Vagin, Gunnar Grimson, Citizen Foundation from in Ireland.
Our championship, and everyone was impressed and looking forward to even further advance. Marco Kami,
coordinator for urban economics and finance of UN Habitat. UN Habitat is an international organization that focuses on urban development. And as Vladimir already told us, it is an organizer of the World Urban Forum and we do look up to the World Urban Forum at the Moscow Urban Forum. We also have Alexei Korabelnikov, chairman of the Financial Committee in St. Petersburg. And also, he's also a person behind the participatory budgeting ideology, and this is something that's been spreading through St. Petersburg from one part of the city to another. And we also have a Lev Shilov, a researcher from Res Publica. Research Center Res Publica means that all the power is in the hands of the people, if I'm correct. And my name is Kirill Nikitin. I'm a partner in PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we do help organizing the forum. We have a number of studies and researches. So when we were getting ready for the Moscow Urban Forum, we tried to look at expectations of people who live in different metropolises all over the world. St. Petersburg wasn't part of this research, unfortunately, but it was revealed that Moscow, citizens of Moscow, has a high demand to be giving more participation to determine public spending or to participate in deciding where the public finances should go, especially if you look at other cities and towns of the Russian Federation. I believe that it in itself, albeit some people might consider it theoretical, but I believe that such an interest of the citizens of Moscow in participatory budgeting is actually quite real. We saw as a result of elections to the municipal council of Moscow, we see that a lot of the candidates actually had proposals to introduce participatory budgeting into Moscow budgeting, at least at the district level. I think that's all I wanted to say right now, and I wanted to give the floor to Gunnar Grimson. Iceland is not a big country, but I know that you've been realizing your size as basically, or to your benefits. You have open budgeting, participatory budgeting. Please tell us a bit more about your experience.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Is there a remote for the very good. Thank you. Hi. Like been said already, my name is Gunnar Grimson. I come from a Citizens Foundation in Iceland. And we have been working on improving democracy with a focus on participatory budgeting since 2011. And sorry, excuse me. It's either I'm doing it wrong or it's not working.
You're doing it right, but
It's not working. Okay.
¿Con problem?
But there was not this. Is it working now?
Давайте помочь, да, в организации, если называется организация.
Okay. Just wait a bit until we have this because okay, very good, working. Or yes, it's me controlling now. Very good. So just a bit of prehistory is that our democracy, not only in Iceland but in the world, is quite old institutions. And when the Icelandic parliament started 1,000 years ago, this was the standard way to get to the vote. It was also the standard way 100 years ago, but since then a lot has changed. But our democratic systems have not evolved with the times. And as has become apparent recently, this is a dangerous thing because if we have a system governing us that isn't in tune with our society, then it's going to be really vulnerable and not going to work very well. With the Citizen Foundation, we have this vision that in order to have a decent society, then citizens must have a strong voice in the political process, in the decision making. And we have been working almost all over the world on many different projects. This is just a few examples of what we have been doing. And here is the best known example, which is Better Reykjavik, which started in 2008. And it started as an idea generation platform with the city of Reykjavik, with tens of thousands of people participating. I know 70,000 doesn't sound like much here, but there are 330,000 people in Iceland. So that may put it into a bit of a different perspective. And we're always working with the city of Reykjavik on how to improve the platforms. And here you can see where the idea generation for our participatory budgeting takes place. The citizens of Reykjavik put the ideas in there themselves. And the budget now is 3.5 million euro. And has been increasing regularly, which is very good. It was stopped for a while, and then participation went down as well, because the people know what is happening. And how does it work? Well, the mission is to improve the city of Reykjavik, and it works in such a way that each person has the same budget amount as a total and chooses the project that she or he wants to realize. So it's an educational tool at the same time. And we created a specially designed software for this. It's called Open Active Voting, and importantly, it's open source software. I don't have time to explain what open source is, but what it basically means is that everybody can look at the code and check out if everything is done properly. And this is really important if we are to trust the process. And just as importantly, and this is often forgotten, if we want people to participate in our democracy, then it has to be, given our modern times, the social media, television, everything, it has to be fun to use and play. And it's strange for some people to think that democracy must be fun, but it's just a reality that we live with. Now, our open active voting gives citizens a direct influence, educates citizens, but probably most importantly, it builds up trust and creates better decision in cooperation with citizens, because citizens know best what they need in their neighborhood. And the voting process starts with people coming here. The ideas are already in. People can view the video if they need instruction. The video is at the top right. And then they choose which neighborhood to vote in. And they can actually vote in any neighborhood they want to, but only one of them. And here you have a project. And do I have a pointer on this? No, that's okay. At the top, you can see where the project will appear once it's selected. Now there are no projects. And you can actually also choose them on the map. And now you can see that there have been chosen of 3 projects up there, and the budget tells me, oh, you don't have money for everything that you want. This is the educational aspect or part of it. And then you fill the budget, and if you decide, oh, I don't want this, I'd rather want this, then you just minus the project you don't want and click a new one. And this is something actually that we found that people play around with. And that is part of making it fun, is to be able to play. And we have had other PB projects in Iceland. Our Kópavogur with a record 18% participation rate. That again may not sound much to people who are used to regular elections, but with electronic democracy, 18% is, I won't say for sure, but it's probably a world record, because it's really hard to get people to participate. And we've had many awards. One we're really proud of is from the Nordic Best Practice Challenge, and others which I don't have time to go into here. And just to break down the process simply, this is really a simple process. It starts with, like I showed you earlier, citizens submitting their ideas. Then after that, the city of Reykjavik evaluates how much each idea costs. Then the citizens vote on the ideas in the software screenshots I just showed you. And then the city of Reykjavik executes them, makes them into reality. And number 5 is something that is sometimes forgotten in the process. Citizens use the results. This would be for nothing if the project coming out of it wouldn't be used. And that's really important. And just to show you a few screenshots of changes that have become in Reykjavik. Some are like simple modification, improvements to playgrounds, outdoor schoolrooms, and you see the ladder on the left that goes down to the beach, so the kids in kindergarten and school can easily go on beach trips. Actually, I live there at the end, if you see the houses at the end of the picture. Not that it's important. And just in general, we have over 600 ideas approved from 2012 to 2017. We still haven't got the 2018 vote that's in the autumn. And the vote is electronic, binding, and secure. The binding part is really important also. The authorities do not have the power to change the result of the vote. They have given that power to citizens, and that's really important. And it's fair to say that all the neighborhoods of Reykjavik have been improved through better neighborhoods. And just a simple graph showing you the participation numbers and ideas and in voting. And you can see that at first it was going down and then it went up. There are 3 reasons for this. The city of Reykjavik increased the budget. They realized after we had told them for all the time that they needed to put more marketing budget into the project. But probably most importantly is improvements in the software which make it more fun to play with and make people share on the social media what they are doing. Because that's the best marketing you can get, is happy citizens sharing things they're doing. And we worked on many PB projects and are working on many PB projects in Scotland, Norway, elsewhere, and also if you heard about the Madrid really ambitious PB project, and we were consulting heavily on that. And it was inspired by Better Reykjavik. And we obviously support our software, but just most importantly, like I said, things have to be fun, easy, informative, and educational if we want people to participate. That's really important. And you must reward your citizens. That's also very important. You must let them know that something is being done with the work, because if they don't know that their work is valued, you will not be able to get more participation from them. It's basic, really simple. And therefore, good communication is the most important thing, because if you listen to the people, then the people will listen to you. And last but not least, and this is a huge danger in the world of today, is that democracy is being privatized. And the biggest problem with democracy today is a lack of trust, and selling our democracy is not the solution to that. So open source, decentralization, and publicly operated servers are what we need to do this properly. Thank you.
Спасибо за презентацию.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And I'd like to make one point. The IT platform that was developed by the Citizen Foundation, not only it is open source based, open source was more important in the previous times, and now there are other tools of ensuring transparency and inability to rig the vote. Like, for example, in the Active Citizen project, we also had similar controls, but external controls. And then we have been watching the situation where the Active Citizen starts to transfer to the blockchain technology, and that makes the voting process completely clear and independent. As far as I understand, the Citizen Foundation provides this voting platform to other countries and other cities which may be interested. And I would be interested to know, how do you finance your business? And another thing I'd like to point out, and I'd like to ask other speakers to comment on this, we all keep mentioning direct democracy. We keep saying that all citizens have a say in the budgeting process, regardless of whether these people paid their taxes or not. So, in other words, regardless of the fact whether they actually contributed to the budget or not at all.
There is no connection between the project and between whether you're a good citizen or not. So even if you're in prison, if you have internet access, then you can still participate. It's true that open source is not the only way to do things. The thing is that what we do, and I didn't have time to go into, is that we split the responsibilities for different aspects of the project, not only in software, but in the real world, and that's really important, so to minimize the chances of a conspiracy. And just to remind you, paper voting is not secure. If anybody here thought that traditional democracy was like really secure and safe, you're so wrong. It's being cheated on every week somewhere in the world. Okay, so.
Only in States.
Actually, anyway. And yes, we provide the open active voting software for everybody that wants to use it. It is open source. You can actually download it and install it yourself. But if you want our expertise, then obviously you would ask us to help you and make some kind of a contract with us. How do we finance us? It's a mix of many things. It's direct money being paid from participating in projects. It's taking part in all sorts of projects that have grant money from the EU and from others. And volunteering. We estimate that 70% of our work since we started is volunteer work. I know, I think actually like that, but I would like to be able to live comfortably off this. But, but yeah, still, yeah, I agree. Did I answer all?
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I pass word to Mario. To Marco Kamia. I'm sorry, so like, and Marco, if you can, could you start from briefly explaining UN Habitat, the whole agenda of the organization, and how participatory budgeting is placed in this agenda? Is it big enough? Is it the biggest or one of the biggest projects? And what is the focus, by the way? Is the focus about democracy, or is the focus about efficiency, or is the focus about collecting additional money? I don't know. Okay.
Thank you, Kirill, and thanks the organizer for inviting me and UN Habitat. I will start with the last question. Our main focus is urban planning. We focus on urban planning, and we link urban planning with revenue generation, land value finance, public space, betterment levies, and all these different instruments to capture value from increase from increased value of the properties. No? So this is one. And second, we link urban planning to efficiencies in competitiveness. So we analyze the major productive capacities of the city. We analyze the competitiveness of the city, the productive sectors, and we link this with the urban planning. And by improving the urban planning, we are able to say, if we are renew this city, or we are going to renew this number of blocks, this will have an impact on productive capacities. No? And we are doing this in many cities, from Egypt to Saudi Arabia to South America. Let me say that participatory budgeting is one of the central topics at UN Habitat. And this is because by definition, in our work is participatory, and we have two major objectives when we work with cities. And the first one is to support better livelihoods, to achieve people prosperity, and to promote urban competitiveness to support higher productivity in cities. So livelihoods and competitiveness are two sides of the same coin. So better livelihoods with basic services, transit and social policies makes citizens' lives better. And higher competitiveness with innovation, entrepreneurship, and a vibrant private sector provide jobs and generate resources so the city can pay for social policies and can finance better livelihoods. So on finance, we have normative and operational work. Some example of this is the handbook on finance for city leaders that you see on the slide. And the other is the 72 frequently asked questions about participatory budgeting. This is something similar that was done in Russia years ago. Both documents are available on the web, and you can access freely because those are public goods. So we think that we are going through very interesting times, and so we need a change in paradigm. And this probably in asking this question because many of the things that are being done today is at such a speed, such velocity, that we don't know yet, we don't understand yet what is being done in Reykjavik. We don't understand yet what is being done in Moscow or in St. Petersburg or in so many other cities. So we need to document and we need to codify the knowledge that is being created. No? I think it's needed to move from simple participatory budgeting, but already many cities are doing this. So this is the classic vision of allocating budget and asking citizens to decide what to do with the budget. But I will, let me say, emphasize in three areas. No? The first is that for this dynamic view, what we need is to incorporate youth as a cross-cutting issues and provide participatory budgeting for entrepreneurship, innovation, and let's say smart cities. So this is absolutely key because in many of the cities, young people, they don't have, even in cities in high-income countries, they don't have easy access to job markets, and then they don't feel integrated with society. I think we need to provide, and the local government, the countries need to provide a sense of belonging to young people and their families. Second is that it's necessary to link participatory budgeting with inclusive policies, providing better livelihoods and basic policies, social policies. And this is, when I say this, is provide better livelihood for older people, people with disabilities, taking into account gender and considering young people. So we have a large set of case studies in this regard, and we would like all this to share with you. And third, I think it's very important to integrate the design of public space with the concept of revenue generation. Because so far, public space was more, let's say, something more like an advocacy. So it's an advocacy. So we have to, local government has to create public space because it's the human rights, it's the right of the people. But I think we can go further because already citizens and already local governments understand the importance of public space. But something that is interesting, and I think from real estate developers, consulting companies, is the link between public space and land value finance. That the new value that is generated by cities by just renewing a neighborhood or a number of blocks, this can be captured by the local government, can be captured by residents, and also by private developers. And this is extremely important. This is a new paradigm shift that is needed in cities.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you so much. And before I give the floor to the next speaker, I'd like to clarify one point. You mentioned the need to integrate youth, young people, into the process of decision-making. And all these new approaches to participatory budget, which use a number of tax solutions, do we risk alienating elderly people, moving them away from the process? Like there's the so-called process of digital discrimination. Elderly people do not embrace these digital technologies and find themselves cut away from the decision-making process.
To do both. You have to implement policies for older people, and you have to implement policies for young people. I want to mention that my family comes from Okinawa, one of the places where people live longer. And this is not because of the food or the vegetables, or this, because many researchers go to Okinawa and research what people are really, what is the daily staple. But it's not. I think the secret of this is the infrastructure that the city provides. The infrastructure the city provides for older people to walk freely in the city at any time. And so it's free stress for people. And all older people feel also a sense of community. And for young people in general, I think this is extremely important, not just in developing countries, but also in high-income countries, because jobs are not being generated at the speed that young people need. And then entrepreneurship, innovation, let's say smart cities or developing policies for smart cities, this provides the key for young people to feel integrated and to contribute to society and to move to many other places. So I think this is absolutely key.
Okay, thank you. Vladimir.
Vladimir? And what is your take on this? And actually, Vladimir has been working on this subject for a very long time. You're probably the longest, or the person who has been dealing with this for the longest period of time. Talking about Russian practice and Russian participatory budgeting practice, I wanted to ask you about the history of the budgeting process and the difference our budgeting process has from foreign examples. But I'd like to ask you a simple question. But is it right to say that participatory budgeting in Western countries is a tool of direct democracy, whereas participatory budget in Russian regions is a way to compensate the disbalances of the overall budgeting process and a way to plug the holes in the local budgets and find money for repair of roads or building water wells. So in other words, finding money for things which should be covered over the course of the standard budgeting process. I understand that you are not going to answer yes or no, but could you please touch upon this as well? So you've put me in a very challenging situation because I can either tell you about one or the other because we don't have a lot of time. Tell me about both. And that will take a bit of time because it's not the first Moscow Urban Forum, but for the first time in its history, we are talking about open budget and participatory budget. And this is a remarkable event. And not only we find ourselves in a very nice place, in the center of a nice park, and for it is here when for the first time I heard from an islander about the practice of participatory budget. We've heard a lot about it, but we've never met a person from Ireland to tell about us. So we got the information from the first hand. And I'm glad to see Marco come here, and we've made friends with him at the World Urban Forum in Kuala Lumpur, and finally, he's here in Moscow. Moscow Urban Forum is an important event, is a well-organized event which is held annually, but it's just one fraction of the entire picture and entire work which is being done under the auspices of the World Urban Forum. 23,000 people participated in the World Urban Forum in Kuala Lumpur. More than 650 events have been held, and all sorts of city agendas have been discussed. But I'd like to make a different point. This is not the first Moscow Urban Forum, but I'd like to start with the key, with the most important thing, and this is it. Today, we view participation of citizens in the budgeting process as a valuable resource. Please take notice of this. It is extremely important, and we've been working hard, working long to get there. This is a resource, valuable resource for urban development, if this is a sincere and true participation. In 2017, more than 18 regions had their participatory budget. Now we are calculating figures for the previous year. Now we can say that more than two-thirds Russian regions of Russia are building their budgets on this basis. In more than 6 regions, this is done on a consistent basis already. The number of projects we have in this area is over 4,000 this year. And this year we have introduced very strict criteria to assess these projects so that we could categorize projects like related to participatory budget and not related. And we have quite a number of best practices in both areas. So now we see that a lot more interest displayed to this, and we are screening these projects more carefully, and the total value of projects in the area of participatory budget is over 10 billion rubles, which is a sizable amount. And I wanted to answer Kirill's question, saying that indeed we don't have our local governance system is imperfect, and participatory budget for a lot of municipalities is the only way to plug holes in their main budget. But we should not, we should look at other options as well.
Of course, there are also other projects that are trying to attract our citizens to participate in urban developments, and Petersburg is one of the more obvious examples. Let me talk a little bit about the specifics. Unfortunately, I missed the president's speech today, but Leo told me that the president underlined the importance of direct democracy. He underlined how important it is to involve citizens in these projects, but also this participatory budgeting is extremely important. It will increase the efficiency of public spending and it will enhance urban environment. This should be a part of the national policy, and it is a part of the national policy. So here we support roots initiatives, and this is not something that all of the countries focus on. We've been working on local problems quite a lot, but today we have a number of regions in the Russian Federation which are trying to improve and build on these practices and to attract non-NGOs to these projects. So right now we are witnessing a bit of confusing trends in urban development. On the one side, we are talking about management of urban processes and the increase in professionalization of this management. But on the other hand, citizens are not involved, and I think that this is an inherent contradiction. We see that everything is being done utilizing the top-down approach, which limits the opportunities for citizens to participate. So here we have to answer many questions. What is the participation of citizens? What is initiative-driven budgeting? We believe that initiative-driven budgeting is not a survey. It's not a poll. It's not a public forum. It's not a vague voting procedure. This is not participation. This is one of the ways we can involve the citizens, but participation means that citizens have an opportunity to choose projects, discuss these projects, to select the projects, and to participate in implementation of these projects. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. So to answer my question, this is both an instrument of democracy, but it is also a funding tool. Well, you know, I believe that last year we collected slightly over 400 million rubles in the Russian Federation. So per household, it's about 200 rubles. And at the same time, we do not view co-financing as an additional important resource for public spending for the financial system of the country. I always emphasize that we view this 200 rubles as a motivating factor. When a person gives us 200 rubles, it means that they're not hiding out. They actually contribute money out of their own pocket. Therefore, they're involved. They supervise, they control, they participate directly. So basically, you're telling me then when people take taxes, they don't view it as contribution. Unfortunately, not. But also participatory budgeting is there to compensate for the deficiencies of the taxation system. Well, I believe that if we see that day when we can work on selective taxation, or when our citizens can express their opinions about where the money should flow using participatory budgeting, that will be the day that we will truly progress forward. But I think that day will not happen for a long time. So let's talk about one of the regions of Russia that is only using standardized taxation to collect funds from individuals and corporations. Let's talk about participatory budgeting in St. Petersburg. So I would like to give the floor to Alexei Korabelnikov. And if you can, could you please talk about participatory budgeting when it comes to the relationship between enterprises, businesses, and public spending? So maybe we can talk about certain co-financing here when a business pays taxes and actually has a say on where the money collected through taxes should go. Thank you very much, Kirill. I think that if we start talking about taxes, it is actually a very correct way to formulate it. We see that a part of the money collected through tax, well, we see that the money that people pay through taxes are quite important. It's an important contribution to public budgets. We see that that share has been growing. In St. Petersburg, it's already 45% of the municipal budget, and I think it will reach 50% in the near future. So that gives our citizens the right to ask what is happening with this money, how is this money spent. So we think it is strategically important to involve our citizens in making managerial decisions so that our citizens can feel that everything that is happening in the city is not just something that is being done by public authorities, but it is something that they want to see. So when we started thinking about the feasibility of this project, we looked at different motivating factors, and the governor of St. Petersburg wanted to gather ideas about the development of the urban environment to understand whether we're moving in the right directions, whether all of our urban programs actually correspond to the demands of the public. I'm a representative of a financial body. So, of course, first and foremost, we were thinking about efficiency and effectiveness of public spending. Right now, we believe that it comes down to getting a maximum result for the minimum of money spent. But effectiveness also means that there is an important social element. We believe that effectiveness is basically when things that are being publicly funded are the things that actually people want done. So once we have this match, we can talk about effectiveness of public spending. Therefore, we think that there are a lot of prospects when it comes to involving citizens in public spending and budgeting. So we've embarked on this project in 2016. And from that time, we managed to increase the number of people who participate in our process from 500 to 3,500. But this is probably just a drop in the ocean if you consider the overall population of St. Petersburg. But these 3,500 people are not just people who want to express their opinion on social media or to just click a button. These are people who are full of initiatives. They're often offering us a very positive agenda. Of course, we have people who complain about things, complaining about potholes on the roads or peeling paints on old buildings. Now, our citizens actually give us ideas about what it is that we can do to improve the quality of their environments. So these 3,500 people are ready to spend their personal time. Our project means that it's not just spending 5 minutes to fill in a questionnaire, but it is a long process of direct involvement and direct participation. I have to tell you that according to the statistics, 80% of our participants are people in full-time employment, and 70% of all of the participants are young people, people that are younger than 30. So the issue here is, do we do it on social media only, or should we involve people who are a bit older? The practice has been showing us that a lot of the older people are not ready to be involved to such an extent as young people are. So, of course, here we're mostly looking at young people, but we are offering possibilities for dialogue to the remaining 30%. So how have we organized this whole thing in St. Petersburg? It is a unique project for Russia because it is being carried out in a city with a federal status in Russia, a city of 5 million inhabitants. Of course, we cannot have a public forum. We cannot pull 5 million people and put them in one place to have a public referendum. So for us, what was interesting is to try and develop a concept that would allow us to involve our citizens in a very efficient manner. So Kirill said that I'm an ideologist. I'm not an ideologist. Alexei Kudrin is a person who developed this idea. And what we did, we built on his ideas. We integrated them into a concept that was developed by the European University, by the Ministry of Finances. So we came up with an interesting practice where we looked at all citizens of St. Petersburg of 18 years and older. Then we see the districts from which we receive the most applications. Then we invite all of these citizens to come to, let's say, a community hall. Then we select a budgetary committee of, let's say, 20 people, and we select it randomly. Basically, we just cast lots, kind of like a lottery. It's a completely open procedure. And then we train these 20 people. We spend several months to train these people when it comes to the foundations of budgetary policy, of urban development. We are teaching them about construction and real estate development laws. St. Petersburg is a historical city. We're quite limited to what can be done in the historical center. We are protected by UNESCO, so not everything can be done, but not all of our citizens actually understand that you can build something on your allotment, but you cannot build it in the center of a historic city. So we train these people. Then they discuss the ideas which they generated within their group, the ideas that they heard from other citizens. Then they select the most interesting, the most promising ideas. They go to public authorities to get legal advice, whether it can be implemented or not. After that, these initiatives are voted on, and then we realize or develop the projects which went through this pipeline. So we've been doing it for the past 3 years. Of course, we have achieved a certain degree of success. Of course, not everything is going as smoothly as we'd like, but still, you would say that 3,000 people is not a lot. But again, we see that these 3,000 people are opinion leaders. In each one of them, if you look at them closely, each one of them has 500,000, 1 million followers on social media. So if a person like this is satisfied, if they're happy, then, of course, these people are influencers because they create what Americans call word-of-mouth advertising. So they will spread the word about our work, and we will keep focusing on these projects. So we really value our contacts with UN Habitats, who has a lot of experience developing such projects all over the world. So we are watching them closely. We want to develop cooperation. We're also looking closely at the World Bank and their practices. Therefore, we're not going to stop right here and now, but we're going to scale it up, and we're going to keep looking for new tools that would allow full involvement of the citizens into managerial processes of the agglomeration. Thank you very much, Alexei. And I have to say that if we are saying that 70% of these people are people under the age of, 30, 35 years, and 30% of these people are people of an older generation, just look, what a difference it makes to people who take part in municipal elections, because basically the ratio there is quite the opposite. And the municipal elections are the same, not just in Moscow, but in Paris, New York. Basically, municipal authorities are elected by the minority of the population. That tells us that this participatory budgeting becomes an additional channel of information. It becomes an additional breath of fresh air, something that we cannot get utilizing our standard processes and standard mechanisms. And because a lot of these ideas cannot pass through this traditional election filter. What is very astonishing for me is that we were talking about St. Petersburg, but we never mentioned municipal MPs and municipal powers. We know that actually a lot of the time municipal authorities were there to solve a lot of these problems that we are trying to solve now through participatory budgeting, through democracy, information gathering, crowdfunding, and crowdsourcing. And of course, I'm not, it's just my remark, it's just a comment, or if you want to answer. Well, you also asked me a question about businesses. Russian Revolution happened in our city. That's why we decided not to collect money from the population. We had this experience. But when it comes to businesses, of course, we are going to try and attract extra budgetary funding that we can use to develop different urban projects. We have been doing it, but not system-wide. And of course, we do not want to be accused of putting pressure on businesses, when public authorities approach businesses and ask for support and financial help. But I believe that utilizing such social initiatives, utilizing different charity mechanisms, I think this is the right way to go. And if we approach it systematically, then I think we'll be able to attract business financing. And I think that a lot of businesses will be interested in that. The main thing is to make it open, transparent, to have very straightforward rules of the game. I think that the key word here is not additional financing, but co-financing. Co-financing, so that the businesses can, use it because they do pay taxes, and they should be able to count on the city's support. No, we always support our businesses, so they always can lean on our shoulders, so to speak. So we also expect a bit of support from business, but we see that sometimes a lot of citizen-driven initiatives cannot be realized due to the lack of public spending. And I think here business can truly contribute.
And Lev, I'd like to give the floor to you. And apart from this political and ideological assessment, we have touched upon a number of these things. So could you please comment also on one moment? So, since previous speakers preferred not to touch on this, so the question is this. To what extent do you think it is right to expect from the citizens a participation in the budgeting process, regardless of the fact whether they paid their taxes or not? In previous years, democracy was based on, let's say, on your ability to pay taxes, and there were certain thresholds in terms of personal wealth. And now we have now we have equal rights, meaning that everyone can vote. In the 19th century, the situation was different. So the budgeting process becomes detached from the process of, let's say, filling this budget. Do you think it's right? How can you comment on this? Thank you, Kirill. And I'd like to thank you for inviting me here to talk about participatory budget. Let me answer your question in the end of my speech, but actually this is part of what I wanted to talk about, and I'll be brief. I have two objectives here. The first thing is to give you an account of the participatory budget. This is what we think, because this is the subject that unites us in St. Petersburg and unites us with a number of our foreign colleagues. And I will also tell you about the practical experience of resolving these matters. There are 4 points which matter for us in St. Petersburg, depending on my conversations with my colleagues and depending on what they say over the course of similar sessions. So it is all about engagement of citizens, offline engagement. It's not about online voting or online debate. It is about engaging them in the offline segment. Urban environment and its complexity is the key challenge in large cities, and this is what we always see once we try to go beyond the borders of playgrounds and sports grounds. So once we decide to go beyond the standardized solutions, we face problems which can only be resolved by experts. And these experts need to be closely involved in this work. And this is what Alexei pointed out in his speech. So consultations, assistance in terms of choosing the proper wording for the application. This is key at the level of the large city because our engineering systems are fairly complex. The legislation system is also a complex one, and not all our citizens are, let's say, legally and technically savvy. But once we increase the scale of public discussions, we may lose the quality. So there is a trade-off between the scale and the quality, and the quality does not have to reduce when you increase the scale. There are examples in the world when they manage to maintain quality whilst increasing the scale, and quality has to be maintained by all means and separately because proper involvement of citizens in this work is key. So the third point is I completely agree with Vladimir. Voting does not make full participation. Voting is crucially important, but public debate and public discussion of this idea, this is the key difference of participatory budgeting process, and that's the key difference. People need to be involved in public debate if we want to do it properly. And the fourth point, this is what Yves Koban keeps mentioning, it's sustainability of participatory budget, and it becomes sustainable after the share of this budget is over $1 per person. So it is about the amount, let's say. So he noticed, going through a number of budgets in different cities over the world, in those cases when the budget is over $1 per person, these budgets are sustainable and they tend to evolve and they tend to get better. So it's important. Now, how we deal with these problems. There is a chart which Eve shows very frequently, and it contains a combination of three main strategies pursued in all cities in the world: spatial budgeting, theme budgeting, and actor-based budgeting. Spatial is straightforward, so it may be district-based or community-based. Theme budgeting relates to a particular thing. And actor-based, it relates to a particular social group, like young people, migrants, or women. And once we say that we have a number of people who are not paying taxes and who are not participating in this election process, like migrants, for example, they don't have voting rights. They don't vote. Through giving them an opportunity to participate in these programs, we provide them with an ability to vote, because they are people who live in this territory. When they detach them from this process, they start making these decisions themselves inside their ghetto, and we lose this social group. We get like a city in the city. So that community starts to evolve by itself. And there are cities in the world which manage to resolve this problem through introducing targeted programs. I tried to show location of a number of cities on this map. Reykjavik, I didn't have the full details of Reykjavik's experience, but I think after the clarification today, we can put Reykjavik on this map as well. The majority of these projects, like the one we have in St. Petersburg, these projects are underway in Madrid, Seoul, in Mexico. They're focused on developing local communities, but there are also projects which go beyond the limits of one strategy, and they start combining very strategic components, like New York, for example. New York is focusing on migrants, and they have the district-based budgeting strategy. And unfortunately, I found only one example, and it's an example of Lisbon. And Lisbon turned out to be fairly successful in engaging people in this budgeting process. So that's the general take on this. I would like to thank all the participants of this discussion. I would like to thank you for the time and for your efforts. And we tried to use this 1 hour to try and maybe ask provoking questions to our speakers in order to have a different kind of discussion. So thank you very much again. I understand there will be a next session in this hall in 10 minutes from now. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions and answers. And in conclusion, I would like to say that we have this discussion here within the framework of Moscow Urban Forum in the city of Moscow. And I do hope that the experience which we got acquainted with, international experience, St. Pete's experience, and Moscow experience, will be used to persuade our colleagues in Moscow that the practice of participatory budget is creating value. It adds value to the city governance model because it creates new ideas. It helps integrate detached communities into the city life. It helps engage people, involve them in city management activities, and this is what we see in St. Petersburg. So it does create value and can reinvigorate the municipal structures. Thank you very much.